The water in your sink is not going down. You ran it to wash up, and now it is just sitting there. A gray pool creeping toward the rim, draining so slow you could watch it for a minute and swear it had not moved. And the reflex almost everyone reaches for next is the expensive one. Grab the caustic jug from under the sink. Or call someone who will be there 20 minutes and leave behind a bill that stings. Before you do either, understand one thing. That clog did not happen tonight. It has been closing in for months, maybe years. And once you can actually see what is down in that pipe, the dollar fix makes obvious sense. And so does the reason the chemical and the service call were never really necessary for the most common kind of clog there is. Give me a few minutes before you pick up the phone. Showing people the plain, cheap way to fix what they have quietly been overcharged for is half of what this channel does. So hit subscribe and these keep finding you. Start with what is actually wrong down there. Because once you understand it, everything else follows. Your drain did not stop all at once. Every time you wash a greasy pan, a little fat goes down warm and liquid. And then it hits the cooler pipe and turns waxy and clings to the wall. Bits of food and soap scum catch on that grease, and it builds layer on layer, narrowing the pipe the way plaque narrows an artery, until one day the opening is so small the water can barely pass. That is the whole problem, and it is why the first thing most people grab, a plunger, usually only buys you a day or two. A plunger pushes and pulls at the blockage and may shove it aside enough to get water moving again. But it does nothing about the hardened grease coating the entire pipe. The grease is still there, still narrow, and it closes right back up. To actually clear it, you do not want to push at it. You want to melt it, break it loose, and wash it away. Heat, agitation, flush. 3 plain forces that treat the real cause instead of the symptom. Here is the method, step by step, and it could hardly be simpler. First, a pot of boiling water, a couple of quarts. Poured down the drain slow and steady. That hardened grease is just cooled fat, and fat melts with heat. So the boiling water softens the coating and loosens its grip, and carries some of it away on its own. For a drain that is only starting to slow, the hot water alone often does the whole job. One real caution worth knowing though, if your pipes are metal or sturdy plastic, or an older joint held together with a plastic slip fitting can soften underwater at a hard rolling boil. If you are not sure what you have, use water that is very hot, but just off the boil. And it does nearly the same work with no risk. Second, once the hot water has run through, pour in a cup of plain baking soda and let it sit 5 or 10 minutes, settling into that softened grease. It is a mild scouring powder that cuts grease and kills odor, and it sets up the next step. Third, pour a cup of white vinegar in after it, and you get that foaming, fizzing reaction everyone remembers from a school volcano. Now, I am going to be straight with you here, because this channel is not in the business of overselling a trick. That famous fizz is not some miracle solvent. The real work was done by the heat. The foam adds a bit of gentle mechanical scrubbing down inside the pipe where a brush cannot reach, and that helps. But anyone who tells you baking soda and vinegar dissolves a grease clog on their own is selling you a story. Treat the fizz as the assist and the boiling water as the muscle. Put a stopper loosely over the drain to keep the foam working down in the pipe. Give it another 5 or 10 minutes. Then fourth, flush it with a second pot of boiling water to carry everything it loosened on out. And fifth, Run the hot tap good and hard for 3 or 4 minutes to be sure the line is truly clear and nothing half loosened is left to settle and harden again. If the water is still slow after all 5 steps, do not reach for the phone yet. The first thing to try is simply to run the whole sequence a second time. Because a bad, long-built clog often wants 2 passes, one to break the worst loose and one to clear the rest. If 2 honest rounds still leave it slow, the trouble is likely something the foam cannot touch. A solid object or a plug deeper down the line, and that is what a drain snake is for. A cheap, flexible wire from any hardware store that reaches in to catch or break it loose. Only when all of that fails is it really time to call a professional. Because then you probably have a true blockage deep in the main line that wants his tools. One safety point that genuinely matters, and please do not skip it. Never pour vinegar or boiling water down a drain that already has a store-bought caustic chemical cleaner sitting in it. Those chemicals can react and splash back, and that is dangerous to your skin and your eyes. If someone already poured one down and it did not work, flush long with plain water first. Better yet, keep those caustic products out of the house altogether. They are hard on your pipes, dangerous to handle, and they cost real money to do a job $1 of pantry staples handles without any of the risk. While we're on that, let me say a measured word about who profits from people believing this is hard. And I am not trying to rile you up. If keeping these plain fixes alive is worth something to you, a subscribe keeps them coming. There is a fat service fee waiting in a clogged drain for a job that often takes a professional the same few minutes it would take you. And a whole store shelf of caustic openers sold dear in heavy jugs for a job baking soda and hot water handle. I am not saying a plumber is a crook. A man should be paid for real work. And a genuine deep blockage is worth his call. But the everyday grease clog, far and away the most common kind, was never beyond you. And it is worse than a scheme because nobody had to coordinate it. It simply pays better to sell a service call and a jug of chemicals than to teach someone that hot water and 2 things from the pantry clear it for $1. And the real secret is not clearing the clog at all. It is keeping it from forming. Because prevention costs almost nothing. The clog is grease, nearly always grease. So the one great rule is never pour grease down the drain. Pour fat and drippings into an old can kept by the stove. Let it harden and throw it out, and wipe a greasy pan with a paper towel before you wash it. Mind what else goes down too, because coffee grounds pack into the pipe like wet sand. And eggshells and starchy peels and rice swell and gather and catch on any grease already there. The drain is for water, not for scraps. A cheap little strainer set in the drain hole catches the stray bits and prevents half the clogs a kitchen will ever see. And once a month, with nothing wrong at all, send a pot of boiling water down each drain to melt the little grease that has begun to gather before it can build into trouble. So here is the plain truth of it. A drain that is kept up never clogs. A drain that is neglected always does. In the end, the whole expensive business, the chemicals, the service call, the gray pool of water in the sink, comes down to a habit nobody was ever taught. So tell me honestly, is the plumber's trade built mostly on real skill? are mostly on the rest of us for getting a fix that costs $1? I think it is some of both. And I would like to hear where you come down. Next, I want to show you the small, steady habits that keep a drain running clear for years. So you never have to stand over a sink full of gray water again.